On the first day of winter 1919, the angels escorted a soul from the heavens to grace the earth, where they bestowed its serene presence in the Sydney home of the young couple, Mary and James Smith. Mary and James, better known as Nan and Bar, named this soul Constance de Valera. Constance after Mary's sister, and de Valera after the Prime Minister of James' homeland, Ireland. The young Con flourished under Bar's gentle, whimsical Irish humour and the legendary products of Nan's country kitchen. It was this combination of Irish whimsy and good Australian bush tucker that nurtured a rare gift for music. Soon, Con and her younger sister Pat, who was also musically gifted, were dominating the Eisteddfod platform.
Connie began her study of music at the age of 7, under the tutelage of the celebrated Sister Cecilia at St Pius's Enmore. She took a Trinity College and AMEB examinations each year until the age of 16, when she completed her Trinity College licentiate. She habitually won the Trinity College medal and was the first in the state in the AMEB exams, winning the 10 guineas which paid for her annual tuition with Sister Cecilia, as Connie now recalls.
When I was 7, my mother had bought me a piano. It was a very expensive piano, and a very good piano. So I had to learn music, Mum said. So down we went to Sister Cecilia at St Pius's Enmore to learn music, which I did. Nan said, you've got to practice. I'll practice. Sister Cecilia said, you've got to practice. I'll practice. And I did 2 exams every year, practical ones, and either 1 or 2 theories exams, I can't remember. It's all glued together. You had to get the highest marks in the state, because that paid, Trinity College paid for, it had a silver medal. I had to get that. Conservatorium paid 10 guineas, which was a lot of money. That paid for a whole year's tuition. So I had to practice. But the first exam I did for Trinity College when I was 7 years old, I got the highest marks in the state. Had to play with the conservatorium. First time I had ever seen a grand piano. All I could see was a reflection of my fingers on the other side of the piano, and I ran off the stage crying.
Why?
Add to more mortification. Because the music went out of my head. I'd never seen my fingers on the piano, on the grand piano like that.
Did you think it was somebody else's fingers?
Yes. Well, what would you think at 7 years old?
So you ran off the stage crying?
Yes. And to my mortification, or embarrassment, or whatever you might call it at that age, at the end of the prize giving, the man who was in charge picked me up in his arms, gave me a great big doll and took me out in front of the crowd, and they clapped. And all I could do was hide my face, and I got the silver medal. Next day, I was taken to Sister Cecilia by Nan. You tell Sister what happened last night. I broke down. Well, did I get into trouble? I never broke down again. So there you are. From then on, it was practice, practice, practice.
When Con was 16 years old, her music teacher, Sister Cecilia, was asked by the parish priest of St Bridget's Maryfall, the equally celebrated Father Casimir, to nominate one of her students to undertake the role of organist. Sister Cecilia sent Connie, who until this time had never played this instrument. Though daunted at first by the size of St Bridget's organ, Connie began her career as church musician, playing for masses, choir practice, funerals, etc. In her own words,
when I was 12, I played for the choir of St Pius's for everything, and Sister Helena had an orchestra as well, and a great choir of voices. And that was good foundation. Then on my 16th birthday, Father Casimir came down to Sister Cecilia and said, I need an organist. Sister Cecilia said, oh, I can give you one. So I went to St Bridget's, and took one look at the organ and nearly fainted. That wasn't the way you did things in those days, you just did it. So I played the organ.
How often?
Well, not when I was 16, perhaps when I was 17. It was 3 masses on Sunday, 7, 9 and 11, and benediction during the week. But the holy days, it was a triduum. 9 days, that was every night, for the rosary and benediction. And it was benediction all through May and all through October. And Father Stone had 6 choir practices a week, 2 for the boys, 1 for the men, and then there's a Children Mary choir and different things like that.
Impressed by her musical talent, the parish priest arranged for her to have lessons in the instrument from the most famous organ teacher of the day, Miss Lillian Frost.
I finished up going to Lillian Frost at the Fifth Street Congregational Church. Father Casimir agreed that I could go there. So to pay for tuition there, I gave Father Casimir all my wedding money. I'm very much very much in those days. I stayed with her until I could marry. Mrs. Frost and I took a week about. I'd play the grand piano with her at the organ. The next week, I'd play the organ, she'd play the grand piano. That's how we worked it. And all these very upmarket men from around, businessmen and musicians, would come in their beautifully tailored black suits, Homburg hats and furled umbrellas. Never smiled.
Now, 64 years later, and from his dwelling place in celestial realms, we have no doubt that Father Casimir is pleased with a 10,000-fold return on his investment. Nan, supported by her own mother, Con's grandmother, Ellen Christie, was determined to advance the musical career of the young protege. To this end, Connie was not permitted to undertake any household chores at all, but was urged to spend all her time practicing and performing at competitions and concerts, etc. Her contributions to her own upkeep and that of the household came from teaching music at various schools around Sydney, and her competition winnings paid for her continuing tuition.
And when Sister Cecilia went to ride, I'd go out there every day in the tram. One day, the brakes went on the tram down the hill to the Iron Cove Bridge, and I was terrified. And I got out of the tram and went home. The next day, I went to Sister, because she didn't have telephones in those days. I went and I said, the tram ran away. She said, well, why didn't you get the next one? That was the kind of discipline I endured.
So how much were you paid for?
Oh, yes, 2 shillings a lesson. And then I coming back. Well, that's 2 bob. 20 cents now. Then coming back in the tram, I'd get off at the tram stop at the asylum there, Gladesville, walk up to St Joseph's School, past there to Mrs Simcotter's, and get 3 or 4 lessons there. And at about 5:30, I'd walk back up again, past St Joseph, up the hill to the tram, and can get home about 6:30.
Her career path was plainly mapped out, and Connie obediently complied. Nevertheless, she still found time for social pursuits, and in company with the Love Girls, especially her good friend Jean and her friend Tessie, Connie and Pat had some wonderful, though unspecified, good times. Nan's clearly marked career path for Con suddenly changed direction when, at the age of 21, Connie met Ray Cloran, a member of the St Bridget's Choir. For the first time in her life, Connie defied her mother's wishes, abandoned the concert platform and married Ray, as her friend Tessie recalls.
She said to me, "You're a very close friend of Connie, she said she can have there was such a lot of nice young men that she could easily marry. But Ray is he's sort of not as handsome as all these others. So I said, I can't do that. I wouldn't do that. And in our conversation with Connie on the different occasions when we met, I said to her once, what do you see in Ray, Con? And she said to me, he is kind, he's loyal, and he's truthful. And she said, those are the three things I want.
The worldly may consider that this event heralded the end of Connie's musical career, but they would be wrong. However, it soon became clear that Nan's decision not to permit Connie to work in the home was seriously misguided. Connie discovered within herself another gift, that of nurturing young Clorans. Mary was sent to introduce Connie to the pleasures of motherhood, and Carmel soon joined her, followed by trees, all within the space of 3 years. The children found that the life was all about having fun in an imaginary world where a wonderfully naughty creature called Toad got up to all sorts of mischief. Connie's bedside stories about the adventures of Toad Hall and his friends Ratty, Mole and Badger were favourites. Mum, tell us about the time Toad went to Cronulla, we would beg. Connie used her wonderful imagination to transport her children in the elevated company of Toad and his friends to all these exciting places where, quite coincidentally, the family had also been on special outings. Connie's child-rearing philosophy can be summed up in one word: play. Jean recalls.
She'd asked me to do say, come here, I said, yes, Con. That'll be lovely, thank you. Well, I'd arrive, Con would be ensconced at the piano, all these children jigging around, what have you. So I'd sit there. And I said, what about dinner, Con? Oh, that's all right, the children are enjoying themselves, you know. So Ray would come in. Oh, Toots, I think he is.
That's right.
Toots. Did she call him Toots? What did she call him?
Love.
Oh, love, would you do the potatoes there, Aggie? Poor man, he just dropped his bag and go do the potatoes. All the best, you had a lovely night.
Connie's lack of training in the mundane tasks of life was soon resolved. The girls, under Mary's leadership, soon took over where Nan had left off in the housekeeping department.
I always remember one day, by this time there were Mary, Carmel and Therese.
Mm.
Now, I don't know whether it was the next one was being baptised or what it was, but I know one made the cake and one made the dress and I can see myself down there this particular day when the cooking going on and this, that, the ball, and all the children were doing something. And I said, Con, what's happening? She said, oh, they're good, they do it, they're fine. And they were too, you know. I've never seen anything like it. I said, oh, Con, you know. I said, they're all right. And then she really was the most wonderful person, really. When I look back, she did have her priorities right.
Yes.
Ray, however, was still without someone to help him with men's work. They were sexist days in those days, so Con persuaded the angels to bring them a boy, John. The male members of the family were still outnumbered, so Con, enchanted by her golden-haired boy, John, found him a brother, Paul.
The family had now outgrown Miller Street, Petersham, so the search was on for a bigger house, preferably one near the church where Con spent so much of her time, playing for weddings as well as the many weeknight devotions and weekend masses. In addition, the children were growing up and discovering that life was not all fun and games. They had to go to school. A suitable house was found in David Street, but unfortunately it was not for sale. This didn't deter Con. A miraculous medal over the fence solved that problem, and the house directly across the road, the one without the ballroom, was soon theirs. Con and the children found life seriously boring. All schoolwork and no babies to play with. So again the angels were persuaded and Loretta arrived. Soon, however, it was clear that she needed a playmate, someone who could share the hard times the boys gave her, and so Annie was born. By 1957 then, the family comprised 7 children, Connie and Ray, plus Uncle Greg on the weekends. The house also needed to grow, so Connie persuaded Ray, Uncle Greg and the 2 boys to enlarge it. Throughout the decades of the 40s and 50s then, Connie's life consisted primarily of marriage and having babies. But the music went on, the main music genre apart from nursery tunes being church music, and the principal performance venue being St. Bridget's. It was during these years that Connie's musical partnership with Father Stan was consolidated, the 2 gathering around themselves the church musicians of Sydney and establishing a group dedicated to the pursuit of excellence in this area, the Guild of St. Pius X. So, in Connie's kitchen at this time could be found, sitting among the kids, the cots and the baby formulas, choir masters and organ students, while homework books and music scores competed for space on the kitchen table. It was not only in the home that music and the family became intertwined. As the children learned to talk, they learned also to sing, and Sundays saw the whole gang in the St. Bridget's choir, where they all sang the tenor line with Ray. The decade of the 1960s saw great cultural changes occur throughout the Western world, including the Cloran household, where Connie found herself the mother of 5 teenagers. She managed to survive it, though probably the musical demands on her time and energies helped. Practicing for and giving recitals for the Church Organ Society, and making recordings of organ works must have served as a calm haven in the storms, the expanding horizons of 5 emerging egos. Creatively or fortuitously, Connie managed to gain a measure of control over the situation by bringing the teenagers, particularly the girls, into the church music sphere. And so, somewhat to their surprise, Mary and Carmel found themselves playing for benediction during the week in a couple of neighbouring parishes, and weekends saw them singing at weddings, together with trees and a young Annie. The decade between 1968 and 1978 brought even greater changes, with 5 of the 7 children leaving home to marry and set up their own households. This was the decade of the great productions in the wedding department. Drawing on her vast experience of weddings, Connie oversaw not only the music, but also the laying of red carpets, the redecoration of the church, etc., etc.
Though the permanent residents of 10 David Street were now reduced, the number of preschool-aged visitors rapidly increased, and Connie was introduced to the joys of grandmothering. It is difficult to say who enjoyed the situation more, Connie or the grandchildren. Connie's house became the meeting place for the grandchildren and their mothers, so that on any weekday, one could find underfoot any number of ankle biters, if not in bed with Connie, then partaking of whatever they fancied in the kitchen. Grandmothering, Connie decided, was the ideal state. One could have serious fun without also having to accept the responsibility. This could be passed back to the parents along with the children, if and when she became tired. And so the 70s and 80s saw Connie taking 17 more little ones on those wonderful adventures with Toad of Toad Hall, who, due to the cheaper travel, had broadened his horizons and was carrying on his outrageous activities in London. Family celebrations grew in size as the grandchildren grew, and their horizons broadened. The Christmas dinner became even more chaotic.
Stand for that! Stand up! Stand up! Faculty members of the faculty! Shut up! You're a doctor! You've got no say in this. You've got no rights. No ears. What did she
In the music sphere, things were becoming quieter in some respects. Recitals no longer featured, although the demand for music in liturgical events probably increased. The declining membership of the church choir was halted by the arrival around 1980 of the Tongans and Samoans, whose great musical talent Connie quickly integrated, introducing them to the great works of church music which they took to with immense enthusiasm, particularly the Hallelujah Chorus and Vivaldi's Gloria. Now in the 90s, the Eucharistic worship of the parishioners of Connie's church is daily enhanced by Connie's music. In addition to weekly practice with a choir, any evening may find Connie at the piano practicing, arranging or composing. Her music these days accompanies not only those entering into marriage, but also those entering into eternal life. Families and church music still combine, and the music at any weddings or funerals is now likely to feature 3 generations: Connie, Annie and Danny.
This brief biography would be incomplete without mention of those experiences which put a line or two on Connie's face and contributed to the lightening of her curls, although some might say that giving birth to and bringing up 7 children did that. In fact, it was probably the sorrow caused by the angels lending her her 8th child, Jacinta, for only a short couple of months that first caused the grey to appear. Indeed, it was not until the birth of her first grandchild, Justin, some 6 years later, that she could accept the fact that her own baby had gone to join the celestial choir. Less than 10 years later, a second great sorrow occurred when her beloved father, that gentle Irishman, went to claim his due reward. Then, after the passage of another decade and just 2 years after their 40th wedding anniversary, her life partner Ray went before her to join Jacinta. And so Con found herself at the mercy of her children. Her boys, John and Paul, who took it upon themselves to seriously challenge her sanity now and then, and her efficient girls, who reminded her all too well of her efficient mother. Perhaps she felt she was back where she had started, but by this time Nan had suffered a stroke and, much to her horror, was dependent on Con. As Nan should have known, Con tackled the situation in her own way and with her usual grace, sitting with Nan in the nursing home every afternoon for 10 years before Nan was persuaded that Con could indeed manage without her. Con now realised that she and her beloved sister Pat were it. They could be next. In fact, it was Pat who went to join Nan and Bar just 3 years ago. Connie now finds herself at the head of the queue, but given the longevity gene bequeathed to her by Nan, we expect you to celebrate with us again in 10 or even 20 years' time.